Now, one thing to note is that 40 milligrams of nectar is not, that's all not going to be honey. 85% of that is actually water, which is going to be evaporated. So the bee will do that. She'll do that, hundreds of times, and she'll only make effectively 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in her lifetime, and then she's dead. And then she'll go out. She'll fly away from the hive to die.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited for you to listen to this episode. This episode is brought to you by, well, jokes. We don't have any sponsors on this podcast. So please support by listening and sharing with your friends and family. Okay, thanks. This week we are talking to Harpreet Singh, who is a beekeeper. Harpreet works as a finance business partner in government during the day, and at night and on weekends, he's working as a beekeeper. I had the best time talking to him and learning more and more about bees. So we talk about his beekeeping journey, how he's been running a business and what it means to market something, and what bees have taught him about life. Follow at I am Banipreet for weekly episode updates, or check out my YouTube channel, which is just my name, Banipreet. Anyways, I hope you all have an amazing day. Enjoy this episode. I have been thinking about just how much bee knowledge you have imparted on me from the first time we met. And I just want to, give our viewers and listeners an opportunity to understand just the background of us. So 6 years ago, I did a writing internship. And I was really interested in profiles, and I still am, obviously, because I'm doing this podcast. But back then I was doing a writing internship, and I was meeting people, different types of people. And you were the one person that I interviewed, one of many. And I remember we talked about bees, and we talked about just the facts about them. And then after that, once I learned about it all, then you put a hive in my backyard. Tell me about what this concept is of putting hives in other people's backyards. Where did that even come from?
Well, it started by accident, to be honest. So the main concept is that each honey produced in each location, it tastes different. So it's sort of like giving people a taste of an area in honey form is one way to look at it. Um, but the whole concept started just by me having bees at my uncle's farm, and then wanted to learn more, and then brought it home. And then yeah, sister wanted a hive, and then my friend Raquel, she rang up and she said, can she have a beehive? And then once we actually noticed all the honey tasted different, it just went from there. It was like, this is really cool.
What was it about being on your uncle's farm that made you want to learn more?
Actually, because when my mum got sick, so what I did is I transformed the whole backyard into an organic garden, ripped up everything that was there. It was all garden beds, everything was growing. But honey was one thing we used a lot, and we're buying it locally. But we just wanted like honeycomb, and we were going through a lot. So I was like, you know what? Sort of saw some things that the beekeeper was buying it off. I just didn't like some of the things he said. He was talking about sugar water, feeding it sugar water, which is important in some cases of beekeeping, but in this case, it was for honey production, and I didn't really like that. And there are many good beekeepers out there, but I was like, you know what? Let me try and do it. My uncle has an avocado farm. It will benefit his pollination as well, and we'll get some honey, and we'll get pure raw honey. And it was actually a top bar hive, so it produces like honeycomb, which you would cut out and then crush it, which is the same method pretty much done today. And yeah, it just started from there. And then once we tasted that honey, it was like, it's so different. I'm sure you experienced as well. Once you taste the honey from your backyard and straight from the hive, nothing's been done to it. It tastes so different. The flavor tones, the complexity, the viscosity of the honey, it was just amazing. And then that's pretty much how it started.
We had honey, and I tried other area honey in Sydney, and our honey would change as well. Like it would change. Sometimes it would be like a caramel flavored batch. like more denser side, but sometimes it would be floral and really fresh and like light.
Hmm.
And I found the experience so interesting. And another experience that I think that everyone is so obsessed with and drawn to is the scraping of the honey. It's visually addictive, visually, not musically, but just from the sound. I feel like it's like music, like, even bees humming, like that must create like such a trance in just when you're working as well. But that scraping of the honey that every honey guardian or every honey host gets the pleasure of doing is so addictive. Why is it so satisfying?
I have no idea. I think it's it's a few of the videos gone absolutely viral, like 40 plus million views, on different platforms. Absolutely, yeah, they go viral all the time. And I don't know what it is, but I remember when I was just doing it rushly. I wasn't actually, I think maybe because I'm not seeing the other side. Um, but I think it's because the crackling of the cells, you're popping all those cells off, and then the honey just oozes out. Uh, it looks really good. Anyone hasn't seen it, you can go to TikTok. Yeah.
Yeah, go to Muscle Honey on TikTok and watch all these videos. They're just amazing. There's different versions of it too, and
Yeah.
there was a video on there where you had someone speaking in a different language. Was they speaking Spanish?
Oh yeah, Julian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. That was so amazing. And just the process of it. And it's so true. And there was another man who was on it and he was like, it's like a mystery. I don't know what they're doing inside the hive. That's what one of the other videos were. I love those videos. It was so satisfying to watch. Another video that was really satisfying was the one that you made of like breaking your bread, like cutting your bread up and putting it. It was like a bird's eye view of you cutting sourdough loaf and then putting honey on it. And I was like, this is ASMR. Like, this is so addictive. Like, that was my favorite video.
Oh
So,
really?
what made you decide to do that video specifically?
Okay, so that video, so there's a guy, he's a hive host, what's a couple, Tony and Trent, out at East Kangaloon, and those guys have my bees there. But Tony's actually a baker, so that bread he baked that morning. And so when I went to the dairy farm, I got the loaf of bread, and then I went to the dairy and I got fresh milk. And when I got home, I realized that the other day, Chai Wali, she had given me her chai mix. So I was like, hey, I'm just gonna make chai, have some bread and honey, and that was it. I thought, let me try this.
Going back to the organic farm that you made, for your mum, when she was diagnosed with cancer, how did you even learn to start that up? Like, just the idea of it would be so overwhelming to me. Like, it's just like, it's so important and it's so amazing that people do it. And I admire people for doing it. So how did you teach yourself about organic farming?
A lot of it I learned from my dad. So dad was always growing. I don't know what the English word for meti is. It's like a spinach.
Spinach.
Yeah, spinach.
Yeah.
He was growing that a lot. Loki, which is like a gourd. He was growing that, and he was doing a lot of seed saving, and it was mainly like a dad
Seed
instructing
saving?
seed saving. So when the save the gourd, you would leave one, like your best growing gourd, you would leave it on the tree, and you let it dry out, and then you would take the seeds from that. So then you have seeds for the next season, and it's from your best growing vegetable
Oh
out of
my
all the lot.
God, that's so cool.
Yeah. So he sort of taught me like, okay, even though you can grow all these vegetables, you pick your best one. You don't pick it. You save the seed from that one because that's your best performing one, and you want to keep those genetics alive. So you keep on replanting and etc. So a lot of it was pretty much from my dad. Not so much on the technical aspects of like soil pH levels, all that stuff. That was all from like Google, and there's a lot of knowledge out there on YouTube. But yeah, the initial thing started from my dad, and yeah, I just started growing, and I was growing a lot of like what they say anti-cancerous foods, or the foods that stain your hands, like red blood beetroot. So we're juicing every day, especially for mum. A lot of juices went into her, beetroot, would have berries, which you call like shatuts. Um, yeah, just so much stuff.
I can't imagine what that period in your life would have been like, but I would imagine in reflection, it shapes so much of what you're doing today. Um, that time where you lost your father and then your mum was diagnosed with cancer that same year. I mean, looking back on it, you know, what did you learn during that time?
You learn, you sort of learn like resilience in a way. Like, I mean, like it- I wasn't the one that went through the cancer, so I mean, looking at my mum just take it on, like not cry about it. She's just lost her husband. She's got kids mourning the loss of their father, and now she's diagnosed with this cancer, and she has to quickly go through chemo. Um, she's going to be losing all her hair. She's going to have operations done. Um, and the only thing, you just feel so helpless that the only thing you can do is just be resilient and not and just keep supporting you know mum through it all, and then making sure she's okay to the best you can. um yeah, you sort of learn that, okay, like the things you were complaining about before or upset about before, they don't really matter anymore, and you sort of take that with you as you go on. um that's probably the number one thing I've taken from it, to be honest.
Do you think grief ever leaves you?
Grief in what terms? Like being sad about it, or
I guess it's whatever you define grief as.
um look, when it comes to losing a loved one, like especially your parents or family members, friends, etc. The pain of that doesn't go away. It's just more you learn how to, in my sense, you just learn to say, okay, well, I'll accept it. um I accept it, and you respect it, and you say, okay, well, it's just a part of life. It's not something to, okay, sort of hold you down too much. Like, okay, it's there, part of life. Okay. And in case of my dad, it's like, okay, well, how do you live better to represent your dad's name in a way? Like, you sort of say, okay, well, now look after your family, work with integrity, be honest, support your friends, etc. You just take that forward. But it doesn't leave you. You just learn how to cope with it.
Hmm. When my nanny died, I felt that feeling of carrying the name forward because they had suffered so much. They had been through so much, and the least you could do is just live a really authentic life. And it's like we're so privileged to have this kind of life. We're really so lucky. For me personally, like the choice, just having a choice as a female and doing like a million different jobs or working and experimenting and just exploring in my life was such a taboo, in my nanny's time and even my mum's time. And so to be the first one to just live fully is probably the best way to honor your ancestors and your family. And I remember when I interviewed you 5 years ago, you were still working at that time while you were doing beekeeping and you were running Muscle Honey because it was early years. And just to see you flourish and like just flourish into all these different avenues of trying to make it happen and trying to like do it full time. So have you made it full time now?
So I'm working with a great team at the moment, working in a government role. And I, yeah, it sort of was different because I'd left investment banking, and the team there was just absolutely toxic. Um, and then all of a sudden, yeah, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do Muscle Honey full time right now. And then bang, got this role with this amazing team. And it's just like, wow, it's absolutely amazing.
Do you think it's too far? It's like because it's so dependent on so many things? Like there's just so many variables that you can't control.
The main problem is that it's just me. For all this time, it's just been me. It's just been me going and checking the bees. It's just been me preparing all the bee equipment. A lot of people think, oh, you just put a beehive there and that's it. No, that's not the case. You have to build those frames. You have to make sure the frames are going to be accepted by the bees. You have to paint your bee boxes. You have to assemble them. Um, and okay, one bee box is not that big of a deal, but when you're doing 200, 300, um, you need the weather to be okay to paint them in your backyard. So you have to say, okay, well, I've only got maybe 2-3 hours to spray paint all these bee boxes, and I need it to dry. It's sort of like you're just really doing whatever you can whenever you can. And then the main thing to go full time is, okay, now I've got all this honey, I have to sell it. So sales, you could be the best honey producer, best baker, best tomato grower in the world, but if you're not selling it, and you're not really in a business. And that's what you need to do to become full-time in any passion, is you actually need to focus on the sales.
It's a different headspace.
Yeah, it is. And then it's like, okay, well, I know I've got a good product, but it can look good on the shelf, it can look good on TikTok, Instagram, but that last bit of getting it from the spoon to the customer's mouth, because I know once they taste it, from the feedback I get, they're going to enjoy it. And it's just getting that little distance from the jar into their mouth to try and get them hooked. But that's the hardest bit. And that's where you need to focus on your marketing. You need to focus on, okay, well, really drive down onto your, what's your target market? What do they like to watch on these socials? You have to really tailor to that, and you have to really drive the sales. I mean, once hopefully I can get on top of that, and then maybe one day it can be full time. But at this stage, it's still on the weekends. It's still a side hustle. But where it goes in the future, yeah, I don't know, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I feel like you're a busy bee. Like, I'm sure you get that a lot, and complete pun intended, because you work a lot. So, like, the devotion you have to doing this, makes me even think about how you were talking about how you have to paint in a limited time space, depending on the weather, depending on all these elements that are not in your control, but you have to navigate. Reminds me of the time when the bushfires were happening. And tell us what went through all your hives and your experience through the bushfires.
Oh, that was actually, quite interesting to see the effect on the bees. When we had the big smoke, like Cloud Sydney, the bees were just so confused because they couldn't find their home in a way, because bees work off pheromones and smells and others, they're really big on their senses. And they were just so confused. They were just flying on top of the hive. I was like, what the hell's going on? People are ringing me up and saying, hey, the bees they're not going in the hive. So I will go there and just pop open the lid, let that smell go up, and put the lid upside down, and then the bees would go in eventually. And it was just like that was in the Sydney region. It was like, wow, they're now in the regional areas where the fires were only 100 meters away or 200 meters away. It was actually quite scary, because you do not want a beehive to catch on fire. Number one, okay, the bees will die, but number two is it's just going to combust. There's so much honey and wax in there, it's just going to go and make the fire even worse. And and you're also thinking about the property owners. So I was busily texting them saying, hey, if you need to move your livestock, I've got a ute, I can help out where I can. And yeah, thankfully, no one was too much affected. There was just burns at the property around. I lost a few hives. Mainly, they just got the hell out of there when the fire was too close. The main damage occurred was to all the trees. So now all of the bees' food sources has just been wiped out. Now you're coming off, a 7-year drought, and then you're hit by bushfires, and yeah, it's just like, okay, they've got nothing to eat in this area now. So that's when it's important to supplement feed. So that's when you just got to, okay, I've got to give them some sugar feed and some protein just to keep the bees alive, not necessarily for honey production. It's just to keep them alive to get through to the next season. And we'll see what happens then. And unfortunately, the trees that were burnt and then some of them have this new growth coming out. You look at it, you go, okay, wow, that looks amazing. It's recovered. Not necessarily. Some of them will never flower again. They'll just be there, just growing. So it's sort of like the really heavily affected areas, it was tough to get them through, the bees just alive through the next season. And then lo and behold, we had floods. And then now we're in the opposite of a drought. We're in the El Nino, El Nino, whatever it is. And it's just completely different. The landscape has completely changed. There's some areas where I would go to, it was just dry, always dry. And now you go there, it's just covered in wildflowers. It's absolutely amazing. Yeah, it's just this cycle of, and I guess that's part of nature. There's a cycle, and you just got to say, okay, well, I can't control nature. I just have to work with nature, and that's, I think that's the core probably motto of everyone that works in primary production is you just have to work with nature. You can't beat it. You can't change it. You just have to do, okay, maybe I can do this to help my, bees a bit, but you can't beat nature at the end of the day.
I think that's so important to know what's in your control and what's not. And I
Oh,
think,
absolutely.
yeah, and I have used the bee, like the things that you've taught me and the things I read about bees when I interviewed you and wrote the article, I have carried with me for years. Like just yesterday, as I was telling people I was going to interview you today, I was just telling them about bees. I was like, do you know there's bee guards at the colony? And it just makes me so giddy. Like I learned so much from that. And even um, when I was researching on bees for the article years ago, there was a New York Times story about the hierarchy of colonies
Mm.
and how, 20% of the colony does 50% of the work.
Yes.
And then, so what they did was they removed the 20% and then another 20% rose. And I was like, does that sound familiar at anyone's house? And I realized, in order, and I've come back to that probably every month of the last like 4 or 5 years. I've always come down to that. And now it's understanding that people you don't rise until the survival environment is there for you to rise. It's really hard. Like humans don't want to change. Like change is not something, it's inevitable, but we don't always like it.
Just to add to that, I think stress is key to growth in a way. Um,
So tell me
like,
more about that.
well, right, say you plant a seed in the ground. It's all this stress of energy, bang, and it will pop up and it'll start growing. I think in times of stress, you sort of you get an idea of a person's character in a way. You know, in a stressful time, someone would just say, okay, bang, all right, let's do the action, let's do the work, and you know, get on top of it, and you build that resilience of keep, knocking that out. Well, I'm just going to go off track here, but that's in business. Any business owner you will talk to, they will tell you it's just you're just putting out fires constantly. Um, there's always some shit popping up. To be honest, that's it's ruining your schedule. It's ruining your plans for the bees, or it's having impact on your business in a way. Like COVID's a good example. And it's just about, okay, well, what's the problem here? And a lot of times you do have to change. Like I had to change my beekeeping because there was pest outbreak going on all over Sydney.
It's really hard, and you're right. It's during the most stressful times that your character is really revealed. And coming back to the stress part, when did you realize and know that it was stress that's helpful for growth?
Before my father passed away, I was like, pretty like, yeah, don't really care about much, no responsibilities, etc. Um, but as soon as that happened, it was like, okay, wow, this is the most painful thing I've, you know, experienced. And then with mum, it was like, okay, wow. And then just seeing, okay, well, just realizing then, hang on, like, you sort of got that backbone now. It's like, okay, well, you know, people are strong when they need to be. And you're seeing my extended family rally around and support as well. Yeah, you just say, okay, that's important. And then also, I don't know if I told you this, but then, you know, then the place I was working in, when as soon as mum got sick and as soon as she went into remission, it was like, okay, I got redundant from there. And then it was like, okay, I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna see how it goes. And then it was just a struggle to get work again, like constantly rejected. And it was just like, man, it's just taken me so long to get back in the workforce. Why? Like I know that we got a GFC, but that was really stressful. And it's all like, okay, well, do you just break down and cry, or just say, okay, well, let me just keep doing what I can do and see what happens? And I don't know, from there, just say, okay, well, let me just keep doing. It's going to be okay at the end of the day.
Look, I'm a big crier, so I would say cry and then figure it out. I would say cry and still figure it out.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I think that's the idea of like accepting. Like, you were talking about acceptance. That's so important in order to change, in order to grow and be adaptable and flexible. Let's talk about bees. I really want to talk
Okay.
about, what do you think a bee's purpose is?
Oh, the bee's purpose depends on the angle you're looking at. If you're looking at it from the bee's perspective, the bee's purpose is, depending on where they are in the hierarchy, is they're trying to ensure the survival of the colony. That's their number one goal.
What's the hierarchy?
So you got your queen bee. Well, she's not the boss, actually. It's a bit complicated. So get this right. So in a bee hive or bee colony, you have the queen who lays the eggs, and she's walking around, she's laying eggs. She doesn't actually control the whole colony to say, okay, we're going to do this at this time of the year, this at this time of the year. It's the colony as a collective that will say, hey, I think this queen is running out of fertile eggs. We're going to be in trouble come next season if she's still around. We've got to kill her. So they'll actually start, feeding an egg royal jelly, producing, getting another queen ready to hatch out, etc. And then they'll actually pretty much jump the old queen.
That doesn't sound like, past historic events in our human history at all.
Yeah, it's very, very similar. It's just, you just watch it, it's people's behavior, it's nature's behavior. It's just a cycle.
It's nature.
Yeah, it's, yeah, it's just.
How can they tell if their eggs are fertile? Like, how can the colony tell?
So when the queen only mates once in her lifetime. So she'll go out, she'll have this mating period, and then after she's mated, she just stays in the hive. She has no reason to leave the hive except if she's swarming.
How long's the mating season for?
Look, you can breed queens as soon as spring starts. So you just got to have male bees around, but she will do a few mating flights. And in that, she'll mate with up to, 10 to 14 drones, I believe it is.
She's busy.
Yeah, she's busy. So she'll do a few flights between, I think it's, what's the time? I think it's around.
Did you say 2 p.m. once?
Yeah, 2 p.m. Normally around 2 p.m. she'll take off. She'll go, and then she'll come back. She'll do that for 10 days in a row.
Okay.
And then she's fully mated. She's got a lot of semen in her, and then she would go into a cell. She'll see the size of it, inspect it. Is this for a fertile egg, which is your female worker bee, which does the honey production? Or is this cell going to be for a drone, the male bee?
Oh.
And then she'll plonk in the relevant egg for that cell. And
wait, she decides what is gonna be born?
What's gonna be born in which cell? Well, the colony then, right, they'll go into the frame and they will draw out. Okay, they'll be like, okay, we need some drones here. So they'll draw out the drone comb, and she will go in just by looking at the size of it and sensing the size, the feet and everything, putting her head down. She would then, plonk a bud in, and then,
plonk a bud in and do the job.
Yeah.
Get the job done.
Yeah.
Okay, so coming back to hierarchy. So there's a queen bee, but really the colony is a collective.
Colony is collective, yeah. That's from my experience, is when I look at the hive, the colony as collective makes all the decisions.
Okay.
to say the queen makes all decisions, probably not. I'll say the colony does. They
Uh-huh.
sense it, and
Mhm.
they sense, okay, so the queen, so she's only mated once. In the peak of summer, she can lay maybe about, 1,500 to 2,000 eggs a day.
Whoa.
So at the peak of summer, your colony's at 80,000 strong. Now, she's continuing laying eggs. Come autumn, come the next season, she needs to lay eggs again. Eventually, she's going to run out. So sometimes when she runs out too early, she's poorly mated, she starts laying drones. And she starts laying drones in the worker size cells because she's got no other eggs. She's thinking she's laying a fertile egg, but it's not. She's poorly mated. The bees sense this in a panic, and they're like, "No, we need a fertile queen." Or if she's laid heavily in spring and summer, like absolutely fantastically, and it's just, it's a very strong colony the whole season long. As a beekeeper, she's going to be a bad queen next season because she's going to run out of eggs. The colony also knows that. So come around January is when they look to replace her, to say, hey, we need a new queen to lead us into the next season to make sure we survive. That's,
How long does a queen last? What's the lifespan of a queen?
oh, look, if you asked me a few years ago, I would say some of my queens are 3 years old and they're doing fine. Whereas now, I'm replacing my queens every 18 months. I mean, they can last, up to about 2 to 3 years, but production wise, they're not going to be good. And you're going to run into issues if you're not on top of that.
Okay. How often do you get stung?
Every weekend, most
How
likely.
do
Yeah.
you even like? Are you just is your body just used to it now?
No, it still hurts.
It still hurts. Just that pain. Like
Yeah,
why you
just
just knowing you're gonna be stung. That
yeah.
is daunting.
Look, the first sting always hurts, but it's like, okay, I'm getting stung by a bee. All right, fine. Because
Okay.
normally when you get stung first, when the
Yeah.
stinger's in your, say you get stung in your finger or
Yeah.
whatever, the stinger's there, you scrape it off. The other bees pick up that pheromone straight away
Yeah.
that she's left behind, and they'll come straight for that same spot or around the area. So okay, I'm going to get a couple more stings now. Now the pheromone is off. The alarm pheromone's there. Okay, I'm
It's a
going to get stung a
party.
bit.
It's a stinging party.
Yeah. So that's why I try to breed for like gentle queens. You try to breed certain traits, just like with the seed saving that people do. You look for your best crop, and you want to continue that on. Same with bees. You look for your colonies that have the most gentle traits, but also good honey production and the ability to overwinter really well in the colder climate areas. So you don't want them to, you know, working so hard expanding their population in winter that they just eat all the food that they bring in. You want them to pretty much shrink down in numbers and moving very slowly on the frames, not using a lot of energy. Those sort of traits. But it still hurts. Every time I get stung, it hurts. The property owners always get stung, I feel like when they're mowing and stuff. It does depend on what the bees forage on as well. So if they feed on a lot of citrus, I find it like really gives them nice caffeine hit in a way.
Nice.
But if they're on like the herbs like lavender, basil,
They're calm.
everything.
They're just
Oh yeah, so
zen.
so calm. Yeah, yeah, so calm.
Wow. I mean, it's not like even though it's like yes, we use lavender to carve ourselves, but why would it be any different for bees? And yet it's so interesting for bees to have those kind of traits. What's like a typical day like for a bee?
Depends on the bee's role. So 10% of the colony walks around unemployed. So it's
Is that just because they're just not as capable, or is it because they're not needed? So it's like
yeah,
the other
well,
people are taking it's like in their household, like mom and dad are taking care of stuff, so they don't need me, so I'm okay.
yeah, pretty much. There was some science. I was reading a paper about bees and decision making, and they can make decisions. So a typical day for a bee, I would say, okay, let's all assume it's a worker bee, a forager bee, the ones we see outside on the flowers. So um, she will go out, she'll go to the flower, she would, suck up the nectar with her tongue, which is called a proboscis, like a straw-like structure they have, and suck up the nectar, and she'll bring it back. Now, on each trip, she goes and she collects 40 milligrams of nectar and 15 milligrams of pollen, which is their protein source. And so she would store that, come back, and she'll give it to another bee. The other bee will take it and then store it in a cell. Now, one thing to note is that 40 milligrams of nectar is not, that's all not going to be honey. 85% of that is actually water, which is going to be evaporated. So the bee will do that. She'll do that, hundreds of times, and she'll only make effectively 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in her lifetime, and then she's dead. And then she'll go out. She'll fly away from the hive to die. Bees don't like to die inside the hive. If they do die through exhaustion or they just collapse in the hive, the other bees will pick them. The cleaner bees will pick them up and then throw them outside the hive.
How do they know that they need like to go away and die? Like, what is that sense?
Yeah, how do bees know when they're dying?
Yeah, like just the ability to be like, okay, it's my time now. I'm gonna go away from the colony.
I think they just work themselves to death. I think they just go. They work so hard. They work themselves to death. They come back. They know they're exhausted, and when they fly out, I think they're just collapsing. To be honest, it's quite sad, and that's why you would see sometimes on the ground a bee crawling around. It's just her on the last legs, unfortunately.
What have bees taught you about life?
Oh, I think they taught me a lot. I think with the nature aspect, like a lot deeper. So yeah, I mean, you can look at the bees and you see them working, you see them doing their thing, and you just realize, okay, well, it's just all cycles. Life's all cycles. Everything is just a cycle. Just recognize what cycle you are in your life and just go, okay, well, that's fine. And, even though it's like, I wish sometimes, I wish the bees could just do, stop standard work like I wanted, wherever I wanted, but I can't beat it. I just got to work with it. Just got to accept it. Yeah, it's just brought more of that appreciation for nature to me. And to be honest, yeah, I have a lot to thank the bees actually, for all the people I've met, all the places I've seen, all the things I get to do, experience. It's all because of the bees, to be honest. So I have a lot of gratitude for them.
I remember you told me that bees travel up to 6 kilometers. Like they can travel pretty far. Is that true?
They can travel for foraging. They can travel, I would say about two, maximum 2 kilometers, because by
Okay.
the time they suck up that nectar and they
Yeah.
bring it back, they've used it all up. If they go that far, they can go up to 6 kilometers. But
What do you mean they've used it all up?
so if a bee's gone, 2 kilometers away, which is quite a distance for a bee, and she's sucked up all this nectar, which is all carbohydrates and sugars, and now she's got to fly 2 k's back. It's a hell of a distance. So she's going to use a lot of that up as her energy. So sometimes you'll see a bee on a plant that's just like sleeping, or it's just exhausted. It's taking a nap. It's just had a hard day's work. So it's they'll end up using a lot of the food as well to keep them going, keep them working. So that's why in areas where there isn't like a close proximity of a lot of like flowering eucalypts of food for the bees, you're going to see the population just absolutely collapse on its head, because they work so hard to get food, but by the time they come back, it's very minimal for the colony.
Can you tell me about when you plant a hive in one place, like in a new area, it's a new colony, and they start circling? I remember that happening. What are they doing?
So they're working out their GPS coordinates effectively. The technical term is called orientation flights. So, you've closed up the hive, put them in a new location. the bees need to work out where they are in this world. So they go up and they start doing like these little circles, bigger circles, bigger circles, bigger circles. They work out where they are, the exact longitude, latitude. They come back and they communicate it to the rest of the hive. This is where we are. Now they know, okay, a lot of bees will keep on doing that just so the whole colony is familiar with where they are. And then from then on, it takes maybe about one day and then bang, they're off working.
Mm. Oh my goodness, that's so interesting. What's the biggest myth about bees?
Oh, there's so many. There's so many. I still get them today. Like people would tell me, no, no. One, I got told you can't move bees on a Saturday. Uh,
What?
I yeah, I don't know. And I said, how do bees know it's a Saturday? Yeah,
That sounds like a superstition.
and then the Gregorian calendar, like I didn't know. um, yeah, just other things. The way I scrape the honey off, I get a lot of negative comments as well. People like, oh my god, you're killing the bees and you're ruining their comb and all of that. It's going to take them forever to build it back. And look, if I didn't scrape the honey off and I did it the other way of spinning the honey, yeah, I'll get more honey production. That's a no gamer. But it's not going to compromise the bees by building all that wax comb up again. You're going to actually get fresh comb, smell healthier for the bees, especially when you put it with a queen lace. That's just my experience anyway.
You've got so many followers on TikTok and you've really embraced that. And since that was your intention of marketing, and, with, things like social media, some things get a lot of attention, some things don't. So, what have you actually learned in marketing?
Oh, I feel like it's more your brand in marketing. Like keep for me, it's the product. Okay, number one, I start okay. The product, it's always got to be the highest quality that's produced. There's got to be no heat treatments to it. It's pretty much just honey crushed there, and keep that integrity with your brand as well. I see a lot of other brands, they do things and it's sort of like, you know what, I'm not going to do that because number one, you know, I don't really appreciate that stuff. And I'm pretty sure a lot of my followers, they're going to be like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you stooping to that level? So keep your integrity is number one that I've learned in the marketing. Like keep doing what you're doing. And in terms of going viral and stuff, I've learned, look, just keep putting your content out there, which you think is beneficial to other people. Um, and if two people like it, yeah, good. Two people have liked it. It's better than none. But yeah, I mean, not all of my videos go viral. There's a lot that just, which I think are fantastic. Yeah, it's great knowledge. But yeah, it's just like one person will comment and go, great work, thumbs up. It's like, okay, it's like, yeah. But unfortunately, the scraping videos get a lot because it's not, people see it all the time. It's very satisfying. But in terms of the marketing, I've just learned, okay, stick to your brand, stick to the consumer experience. The marketing doesn't stop at the social media aspect, because if they give you the honor of purchasing your product and giving you, their money, when you deliver that product, there's got to be a customer experience in there too. It doesn't end just by putting a viral video up or something really cool, some information. It's how the packaging is on the honey jars. What's your labeling like? What does it look like? How does it look like when it gets to the customer is more important than any video I can probably put up. And how the customer feels about receiving that honey.
That's so interesting. And I know this from your video that you posted on TikTok, and it was of your sister packing, doing the
Yeah.
packaging for that, and I just love that. Like that's so cool. And I agree. I mean, it's always about the experience, and marketing ultimately the biggest way will be and the strongest way will be word of mouth. No
Oh,
matter
definitely.
what, hands down, that will always remain timeless. What are you most excited about right now?
I don't know. I'm just really excited about, okay, where's Muscle Honey going to be in 2 years' time? Where's it going to be in 5 years' time? Is it going to be still be around? Where's it going to be? That's what I'm excited about. Where this beekeeping journey has taken me so far to date, where's it going to take me, in the next 5 years? What's going to happen? So that's what I'm excited about. And the places I'll see, the people who else am I going to meet, that, and what story do they have to tell me, and what wisdom can they give me? That's what I'm really excited about.
Where can listeners and viewers go to find all your work and your socials? So tell them where to
Yeah.
find you.
Okay. Instagram, it's muscle.honey. TikTok is the same, muscle honey, I think, in one word. But if they want to know more about the website, everything, it's www.musclehoney, one word, .com.au. Make sure you put the .au, because if you go musclehoney.com, I got no guarantees where you're going to end up.
Harpreet, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Barney.
Thanks for joining me on the episode. I'll see you next week for another one. All right, bye.